A-spec. A-spec, the WTO advantage, the Banks advantage, the K, and then the half.
Gotcha.
Is everyone good? All right. Cross-check checks, they don't have a reason why that doesn't resolve all their offense. They say it'll create a normal. There's no normal that's going to happen. This is the end of the season. No one's going to remember this debate next year. They say pre-round concerns they could have asked us, and they didn't. The literature should determine the debate gambling is unique. States laws uniquely heated gambling laws. The topic doesn't specify, which means if they ask us to specify anything outside of the topic, it's infinitely regressive. They could ask us to spec anything the topic doesn't require. There's no explanation of the ground loss they get, which means the precision impact is solved by specifying in cross-checks. Competitive. It doesn't make a lot of sense in a world in which we told them what states were, and they didn't have no explanation of arguments that they lost. They say that there's neg bias. They say there's not bias, but there's neg bias. They have a 15-minute block and I have 6 minutes to answer it. They also get they also can kick arguments, which is probably a reason that we and we have to stick with ours probably in our counter interpretation that we should have to clarify in cross-checks, which means reasonability does make a lot of sense and doesn't lead to judge intervention. If you should just prefer the counter the interpretation that makes the most sense, not makes the most sense or is the most reasonable. You can go to the WTO advantage. They've conceded it, which means we are winning a couple of impacts and definitely outweigh the impacts on the Banks advantage. First is trade. It's a controlling and dampening factor, which means it resolves any of the conflicts that are going to happen due to imperialism or warming negotiations. It resolves those because it provides the TSP as a credible site for resolving those disputes. Second is the China impact of those relations are going to escalate nuclear war. Third is terrorism because of the increase in poverty that will happen without the plan. It increases recruitment and draws in great powers, which means we have a better internal link to 3 different extinction scenarios, which outweigh the Banks advantage. Go to that now. They say there's no internal link. Yes, we do. Banks are on the brink of the status quo because they are structurally flawed, but if they get rid of the massive regulations that the UIGEA imposes on them, then they have the ability to facilitate investments into clean tech, which resolves all warming. They say warming's exaggerated the median. There's no impact, or when you see evidence is just much better. And there's this question. The sharp evidence is from the IPC reports that have a combination of 2,000 scientists internationally and say that the feedbacks are not going to happen. That those models were skewed, and that adaptation doesn't happen. That's the app. The green tech is uniquely necessary. That's a cross application from the K. The tech is the only thing that's going to resolve environmental problems in the status quo. They say U.S. doesn't solve the collaborative evidence. Pretty fantastic. The U.S. tech is uniquely key to be disseminated internationally, and the U.S. leadership is the only mechanism for ensuring that tech gets disseminated internationally. I'm going to the K arguments first. They say it's going to cause conflicts. There's no link to the conflicts. Collaborative says that that's the status quo. That those conflicts are inevitable, but the U.S. leadership is uniquely key to resolving them. They've conceded the RIC reference, which is pretty fantastic. That representation shift people's consciousness towards the problems that are happening. Means they have increased incentive to deal with things like their personal consumptive patterns. That's also the wrong evidence. Completely conceded from the one you see. It's the only piece of evidence in this debate that's contextualized to the way the affirmative gets implemented, as well as things like warming representations, and says that the status quo is political mobilization because of the conservative disinformation campaign, which means the AF is the only one that's forced those individual consumptive changes that solve things. You also don't have a very good answer to the Rodwell evidence, which is fantastic. It says that there's no explanation for the way that there's the same representations when Bush wanted to invade in 2 different instances. It only did in 1, which means that it's not just the representations, but the combination of the representations and the action, which means they have to win that the implementation of the AF directly causes that type of military intervention, but they have no internal link to that because those representations are inevitable. They can see that multiple pieces of evidence say that those representations are happening in discussions in the status quo, which non-uniques all of their impacts. They say that we focus on white interests. There's no link to this sharp evidence that the structural violence is happening in the status quo because marginalized communities internationally are those most affected by warming, by things like ag depletion, which means they probably have a greater internal link to this. They say we shouldn't care about those warming impacts just because we tag an extinction impact on it, which also means that they don't change those consumptive patterns which are necessary to resolving those impacts internationally. They say we have an obligation to call it white because we have no link to this. There's no specific reason why the representations were white. That's not none of their evidence is specific. You should hold them to a pretty high threshold for that. They say we cause a racist stereotype. The sharp evidence says European conflicts are going to happen, which means they're not just saying that the global south is going to mess things up because of warming, but that those marginalized populations are those most affected by warming. They say predictions, but those are good. That was directly evidence that we have to be able to make predictions in order to change the policies that are necessarily. They say imperial violent imperial balance, the one in our rhetoric exists in the status quo. That was above. They say epistemology. There's no link to this. They effect is not the same. We're not using the same racist depictions their evidence is talking about. They're talking about past government policies which said that the global south was killing all this. Our evidence is saying that the U.S. has really met things environmentally, but our tech is the only way that we can actually resolve that, which takes out all of their racial discourse arguments because we are a step away from those status quo policies. They say climate negotiations. The collaborative evidence says the U.S. lead is uniquely key, which means we have a better internal into climate negotiations. They say we stall it. The collaborative answer says both that we are uniquely key, but the tech and finance partnerships are uniquely key. That's the Cheeseman evidence. They say we made a choice to securitize ROM answers to this. It's total BS that the focus in the status quo is politicizing it, but we have to, they say the alternative resolves this, but but first of all, it's inevitable, and second of all, they don't change the justification, they just say enact the plan. They don't have a plank of that also resolves all this other justification and permutation debate. We're not severing it. They've conceded the framework on the K that you should have a competitive policy. That's functional competition. Otherwise, the alternative is forcing the app to debate against themselves, which is uniquely bad. They don't have any defense of textual competition. Functional competition is the only one that makes any sense to K. Controversial is better. His only argument is about ethics. Isaac's evidence says that moral purity undercuts political responsibility. We have to look at the effects of actions. Neoliberalism is inevitable. That takes out the impacts on the counterclaim about gambling bad. Third is conditionality. They just said that they were disbarred. Interpretation is that they were contradictory, which causes argument of responsibility and kills Afghan counterplan. They don't have the ability to solve WTO. The Carbush evidence says that liberalization is what's necessary, which means that if they ban gambling, they don't access this. There's also no net benefit to the counterplan. Evidence doesn't say credibility or it's about gambling. The net benefit debate at the bottom, all about your reasons that gambling is bad. They have no evidence on any of this question. The one card that they read is pretty relevant. The Miller evidence, the one he also answers this and says gambling is inevitable. Regulations resolve all those downsides, but tech is not able to control. That was the one EC evidence. They don't solve trade because we're the only ones with evidence on the symbolic issue of gambling and the WTO dispute. They also definitely don't solve banks because the issue in the status quo is that they're dealing with anti-money laundering and terrorism regulations, which inevitably happen in the world of the counterplan. They don't deal with those regulations. The app is uniform regulations in the states.
You have 8